Hello and welcome to the Attention Shift. In the week, FIFA looked at the World Cup and thought, you know what, this game is missing more ad breaks. The New York Post quietly shut down its newsroom and opened up a YouTube studio, and nobody's entirely sure where the line between publisher and creator really went. Major League Rugby have decided the fastest way to grow a fan base ahead of the World Cup was to stop explaining the rules and just give people someone to root for. The X Games killed the event, kept the brand, launched a league, because it turns out 4 tentpole moments a year isn't a media strategy. And Disney Plus dropped every single March Madness game onto European screens for the first time ever, and asked a continent that didn't go to a college in Ohio, do you really care about it? Without further delay, you know the drill. 5 stories, 5 minutes each, Joe. You ready?
Ready, Eduardo, let's go.
Let's go over to you.
Oh, you're getting great at that. It does make me chuckle. You missed your vocation as a newsreader.
Don't know about that.
Anyway, ad breaks coming to football. Oh, groan. Sorry, hydration breaks. Not ad breaks.
Sorry. Oh, right, okay. I didn't do that on purpose then, just to throw you.
No. So, anyway, yes. World Cup introducing 2 mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks per match. Yeah, really. Okay. For the first time, broadcasters will be able to sell advertising during a live football match without having to wait for half-time. I mean, people really see this for what it is, right? Nobody's fooled. It's 104 matches, and now they've got a whole load of new inventory they can flog. Isn't that just more commercialisation of the live game of the World Cup?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it is in the land of commercialisation after all, right? So I was reading about this as well. So during the 2022 World Cup final, US advertisers paid $1 million for a 30-second ad slot. So the consensus is on this now that these are going to be premium on top of that. They're already going to be paying more for the ad slots anyway, and this is going to be premium still. So, yeah, look, you can see exactly what they're doing here. More opportunity to sell more. And I guess the hope is for it to try and be as lucrative as the Super Bowl in a sense, right?
I get it. I get that need to commercialise it, but hasn't football always sold itself on the purity of the game, almost like English and European football has resisted that American-style commercialisation? And now the World Cup's in America, and guess what? Hydration breaks. And
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, if this works, which it likely will do, once football learns it can sell ads in hydration breaks, it's going to spread, right?
They'd almost be better off doing it in the VAR breaks. I don't know what's going on with VAR. I mean, that's the obvious place to start bringing brands in, right?
For sure.
It takes 5 minutes to make a decision these days on whether a goal's a goal or an offside's an offside. You've got a real opportunity there that's not interfering because VAR's already doing the job of the interference in the game. But so you're right, though. Like, if you've got that already, and then you're going to add in other interferences too, like, it is going to be stop, start, stop, start. And again, I am not anti-advertising because I understand that ultimately, the game has got to be paid for somehow, and fleecing fans for tickets is not enough. There's got to be other ways of getting money into the game as well. But I think I was reading here that the former Coca-Cola and Visa sponsorship exec said it was a no-brainer for FIFA to do this. Like, clearly they've gone and done the research and they know that the brands are queuing up to spend the money. And you do wonder as well, have they been having a look at a little bit of what went on with the Six Nations and how that's played out? Because in the last couple of weekends, I've not heard as much moaning about it. I'm assuming they still did it.
There was a lot of vocal objection when it first happened.
First couple of weeks, yeah. But I've not heard any more.
Is it just a case of, people will moan for this first World Cup and then they'll just get on with it and that's it? Ad breaks within live play will just become the norm?
I'm not sure, because I think if it's just a one hit and then done and then it's not done again, people just moan about it the next time around. The only way people don't moan about it is if it carries on and it stays there. I think what it does show is, right, that the value of live attention, how valuable that is. Like, in that moment, like when people have got the real attention on it, doesn't mean though that you should. Go on, I knew you were going to say that.
And also, I don't know. I'd like to see that proved. I'd like to see it proved that if the live broadcast suddenly gets littered with a ton of ads, is that advertising effective? You can't. You're going to struggle to convince me that advertising is really effective, because the ad loads on every platform are increasing, and people are just screening them out. They're a nuisance, and sometimes I think it actually goes the other way and has a negative impact. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, I don't know how I feel. It'd be interesting to see how these hydration breaks net out, and whether it's going to be an opportunity for some good quality kind of brand advertising in it. That'd be cool. But
for me, I think it's, and I think we said this before when we did the Six Nations, and obviously we don't want to harp on about this, but I think it's how you do it is the key thing. I think cutting to a video ad with audio that feels like it's got nothing to do with the experience whatsoever feels massively intrusive. Squeezing back to whether that's an L wrap or something like that, where the game is still going on, that's not interrupting, but there's a strong brand message.
Off.
Yeah, visual without the audio, I can live with, because I've seen it when I've travelled, and it doesn't bother me that much. When you switch the audio on as well, that it's almost the game itself, even though there's nothing going and gets relegated, then it feels too much. But
I think there needs to be a lot of testing and learning to figure out how it sits alongside and doesn't jar. Anyway, next story.
So, the New York Post have turned its newsroom into a YouTube studio. So, they've launched a daily show called Shine Time, hosted by Adam Shine, funnily enough, because he's got his name and title. So, it's a live weekday show that's streamed on YouTube and on the Post website. It's a sports show. It combines live commentary, guest interviews, reactive sports debate. And again, it's that broader shift of what are now becoming digital-first publishers moving into that space of YouTube, essentially, where they feel like ultimately they can I guess, take a cut of the ad money. There's no other reason that they're doing it, right? And it's effective these traditional newsrooms who, probably from their perspective, they feel like they are well set up to be able to create good quality content. And I've had a look at the content. It's well produced. It's visually appealing.
You didn't like him, though.
It's not my favourite, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I had a bit of a look earlier today, and I was going to say you could hardly tell what he was saying, and I'm sure anyone watching or listening to this probably says the same about me, so I mean, that's overly harsh. But yeah, I look, I guess there's there's a brashness to him how he does things, but again, I've not grown up with him as a presenter, and I think a lot of people, certainly in the US, do know who he is, and he's very well known. So it's that, he's definitely got a specific style to him.
I wonder if this is the final kind of tipping point where traditional news media publishers that are ostensibly to this point written word journalists, if you like.
Yeah.
They know that they have to have video now. I mean, you can't just rely on written journalism anymore. You need your video. We're all visual processors now in terms of, we go to YouTube and TikTok to find things out. So video, even for your sports news, is kind of non-negotiable, right?
Yeah, because ultimately, like, video advertising is the most valuable form of advertising, so that's why they're pivoting more and more. I've had a conversation with a few digital-first publishers over the last couple of weeks, and they're saying, look, we've tried all of these things, and we feel like we really need to move into video, because ultimately that we really want to start to earn the big bucks, and they're thinking about how can they create unique programming. And I go, look, there's not a lot wrong with. He brings big energy. He's got big opinions. It's going to be very clickbaity how he's going to go about doing what he's doing. And they've only just launched with it in the last week or so it's very early stages. Yeah. It's doing about 5,000 views on YouTube per show, but I think actually it's more of a clip form. I think that hour long, they're going to be clipping that up and putting it out on lots of other. So yes, the live is important to them.
Which can often drive more engagement than the show itself. I mean, look at Saturday Night Live or look at late night talk TV in America. It's all of the social clips that do the heavy lifting now, really, rather than the show itself, right?
Yeah, and lots of people say, well, why do it live anyway? Why not just pre-record it? Because ultimately, as people are watching it live and saying stuff, they're already doing half the job for you of telling everybody else what he's just done. And by the time they tell everybody else what's just done, the clips start to drop and the people can see them themselves, and it just fuels the whole experience.
get it. I get that it's a growth opportunity for people like New York Post and traditional news publishers. Does it cheapen sports journalism though? Because it turns it more into sports entertainment when it's less of your sports reporter writing your news report and more of a personality.
I think sports journalism.
Or am I just being snobby?
I think sports journalism is sports entertainment for decades already. Look, you travel to the US and you watch a lot of the shows that are there, like Sports Nation, things like that, and the way they're delivered. You look at obviously the way that Sky over the last 10, 15, 20 years have done Transfer Deadline Day, and with Jim and his yellow tie, and it has become entertainment in itself already. So I think this is just it's that last moat, as it were, distribution. This is allowing these publishers to think about distribution of content, and normally would have been confined to their broadsheet newspaper. You see it on the newsstands.
Yeah.
Now, because of what they're doing, they can go, in theory, anywhere with it. And it's the convergence of media, essentially, really, isn't it? That everyone just ends up doing the reality is the same thing. And then what wins through? Well, the best content, in theory.
I guess, now as well as being a sports reporter and journalist, you've got to be a presenter too, right? But actually, most young people who are getting into sports media are likely to have played around with creating video anyway.
But also, that was, if you think about it the other way as well, I remember when I worked in football 20-odd years ago and we were dealing with local media. Back then, local media news reporters were being trained how to use cameras and do audio and stuff like that. So that was the reverse of it. So they could do it all themselves. And that's not even... I think it's only been talked about in recent years mainly, but that was already happening certainly at a BBC level 20-odd years ago. And you'll have seen it yourself, right? So it's the reverse, but the same in the sense that one person can do it all.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Rugby?
Right then, so Major League Rugby, and it was funny, I was having a chat with a friend of mine at the weekend, and what was Major League Rugby then? Oh, Major League Rugby is a league in America of rugby. They've got a league playing rugby in America. So for anyone watching or listening to this, Major League Rugby is a rugby league in America. But I was quite surprised when I explained this, and I think sort of the normal person on the street wouldn't, we know what it is, but wouldn't necessarily know that. And I was lucky enough 3-4 years ago to go and see the LA team in the Coliseum of all places, and it was very early on in that process of Major League Rugby. So look, it wasn't a massive turnout, and so much so that after the game we were able to go on the pitch and throw a ball around. I mean, it was amazing to go in the Coliseum and do that. But essentially, Major League Rugby have partnered with OS Studios, and they're looking to rethink how matches are presented across broadcast and digital. And for anyone who doesn't know OS Studios, they come very much from a gaming culture, entertainment, music. So clearly, Major League Rugby are thinking about how do we make this more entertaining than... Oh God, I've got to be really careful what I say about rugby here. More entertaining than rugby naturally is. And they really want to focus more heavily on player personalities, storylines, and character-led narratives. Now, I don't know enough about Major League Rugby at the moment. I know we did have I think Chris Robshaw went out there a few years ago to play Major League Rugby. I'm assuming that Major League Rugby are going to try and sign some of these personalities. Otherwise, they're creating them from scratch, which is a tough old gig, right?
Yeah, and I knew nothing of this story until we were researching what to talk about. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought it was really interesting, given that of the sports in the UK, rugby does to me to seem the least keen on surfacing individual players. It's about the team, and there's no kind of tall poppy syndrome. Nobody stands head and shoulders above the rest. It's about the team. I get that, and in a way I like it, but also there's no getting away from the fact that increasingly young people, they fall in love with the people inside sport before they fall in love with the sport. It's the characters. We know this. So it feels like by not acknowledging player personalities and them as a distribution mechanism, that actually rugby could be doing itself harm in the long run. And I think about Henry Pollock and how there was so much potential in him as this kind of young, cool player. But when a few months ago, I kind of ventured an opinion on LinkedIn about, he should be put front and center. People were like, no, we don't do that. Whereas, this feels very like, Creator Sports Network, I think Michael Cohen posted something about athletes who were streaming content on their own personal channels and their social. It's really powerful. We know that creators and athletes are a distribution layer that's been largely under-leveraged. So I think it's really interesting that Major League Rugby is doing that first.
Yeah, there's an interesting quote here from Paul Guest, who's the SVP of Sports and Growth at OS Studios, and he said, for US audiences to care about players on the pitch, they need to care about the players off it. We're not focused on trying to explain when a ruck is formed or if a line-out is straight. Entertainment and excitement has got to come before education. I would argue that's probably all sports. That's not just a US rugby thing. I think more and more now.
Interesting how the US are not afraid to say that out loud, though. I don't think you hear sports execs in the UK saying that too loud.
Because the US sports fan don't lambast them for it because they know it's entertainment. Whereas in this country, it's kind of like, you've ruined the purity of the game. Like the point you just made, you've ruined the purity of the game now. No, I'm not interested. Thank you. I'll do something else. But it's, they think that Major League Rugby fans need to understand the personalities in the game more than the rules itself. They need to have someone to root for, but we all need to have someone to root for, right? I had a conversation with someone today about whatever team you're connecting to. If your team is transient for whatever reason and players are coming and going, it's really hard for you to almost fall in love for the team you support. There's certain individuals that you want to connect with. That's why as a kid growing up you have a favourite player. Now look, the game's changed quite a bit now, if certainly from a football perspective, that kids are more going after the Messis and not necessarily the local team in a similar kind of way. But I think that connectivity's still there with individuals, even more so. So I get what they're saying. And they've got a long pathway to the Rugby World Cup. It's 2031 for the men's and 2033 for the women's. Look, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out, right? And if they manage to do this, because it's such a crowded market in the US. Yeah. And at the same time that Major League Rugby want to create personalities, so does every other league.
It'd be an interesting one to watch. I think this will be, potentially, if it works, it'll be a blueprint for maybe rugby over here following. Anyway, X Games. X Games is launching the X Games League, which is interesting, this story, because it really reflects something that I was actually speaking to Paula and Bengu about, and I joined them on their Business of YouTube newsletter this week to talk about this event trap, which we've spotted on both YouTube and Roblox, in the sense that when leagues focus everything on their YouTube and Roblox around the league and around events, there's a big drop-off afterwards. Yeah. Whereas we know that creators optimize for continuous content. Yeah. And it's interesting that X Games, which to this point had only really had 4 events per year, so was experiencing the peaks and the troughs on social. So hard. And of course, X Games is huge on social. But it's really hard to sustain between those 4 individual events. Lord knows how the Olympics do it every 4 years, when they acquire a new audience and then literally forget about them for another 4 years. Anyway, I digress. This, I think this is a really smart move, because they're going to this season structure. So gone are the handful of events that used to be the X Games, and now it's this continuous league with regular competition. Gives them a chance to stem those peaks and troughs that we were talking about, kind of create these ongoing narratives. And X Games really good at that. If we're talking about personalities and drama, that X Games is replete with that. So this always-on content ecosystem, I think it really reflects what I was saying about with Bengo and Paula, in terms of trying to stem this kind of, got loads of fans, you've got loads of interest, and then it falls away, and then you have to try and bring them back again. It's pretty exhausting. So if you can just stem that a little bit and keep that continuous content, then we know that attention, is likely to stay much more sustained. So I think that's a really interesting move from X Games, and arguably one that's been long coming. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's interesting as well, and like I said, when we were told about this, I started doing a bit of research into it as well. So there's going to be 4 inaugural clubs that are represented: LA, New York, Tokyo, Sao Paulo. So it's instantly a global league of 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see if over time does that develop into more, like you got, I know London's not an obvious place to have snow and whatnot, but you'd imagine over time, because I remember that back years ago they did an X Games in Battersea Power Station. So look, these things get put together in different parts of the world as well. So it's global from day one, and they just did a draft as well, so obviously lent into sort of the American way of who gets to play for who and or who gets to take part for who. Sorry, and and one of the most established stars in this is an Australian, Chloe Covell as well. So. They're really trying to have a global spread to it. But what they've also done as well is that the athletes will receive 100% of their service fee, as it were, regardless of whether they get injured or not during the season. Because I guess the reality is the more things they do, the more likely they are to get injured. And, we saw some of that in the recent Winter Olympics and Paralympics, right? It is easy to just, you ever so slightly misjudge it, you're injured and you're out. The fact that they're making that commitment to the athletes as well means that they're probably more likely to go for it, I guess, and you get the highest quality competition. So, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, if I was at X Games, there'd be so much that I would be digging into before we started in terms of those narratives. You want to pull out the heroes and the villains from Brazil or from South America or from Japan, and when you've got a sustained schedule. I remember when I was working at WWE, at the beginning of each season of WWE, you've got almost the story meetings, You've got the bouts, you've got, who's going to be the babyface, who's going to be the heel, who's going to steal somebody else's girlfriend kind of thing. I mean, but you can craft those narratives if you've got a schedule. And I think that'll be really, really cool. And of course, makes complete sense having a team based in Sao Paulo, given that South America loves its sports, loves its X Games, and consumes most of their sport content through YouTube, as we know, on platforms like Kazay TV. So I can see it going off. And certainly as somebody who, I have a lot of X Games and content on my socials, I can't wait for this to start feeding through, because I feel like there's going to be some really good stories that come out of it.
So expect us to talk about X Games again when Joe's explained to me what has actually gone on with it, because I'm not a follower. So I just like heights. And those kind of things just scare me, so not one for me. But again, some of the stuff at the, like I said, Olympics and Paralympics, I guess the X Games orientated sports were probably the ones I watched the most and enjoyed the most. And there's some amazing young athlete personalities coming through at the moment.
And for me, there's stakes. There's genuine stakes, right?
Yeah.
In big air or the half pipe, there's stakes. Yeah. So and it's quite quick. It's watchable because it's quite quick. You've got rider after rider after rider coming down, coming down the hill. So I can't wait for that. I'm excited.
Cool. Right then, March Madness. Joe, what's the top you got on?
I've got my
Syracuse. There we go, Syracuse. T-shirt on. So March Madness goes global. So anyone doesn't know what March Madness is, March Madness is the men's and women's NCAA college tournament that goes live every 17th of March to the 7th of April or there or thereabouts. So for the first time ever, Disney Plus are going to be streaming all 134 matches across the men's and the women's across Europe and South Africa. So it's the first time that European fans will be able to access every game through one subscription. And also DAZN have done some sub-licensing through that as well, and also DIN in Germany too. I'm excited about this because I've only ever really I've never been to a March Madness game, but I've been in New York multiple times when March Madness is on, and it's an unbelievable experience to be in a bar when there's so many games going on, and it's not your normal franchise. These are college teams, so effectively university teams playing off against each other. The intensity is unbelievable, and it's very different to US franchise sports because if you think about it this way. Local. It's more local. So a college, in theory, is never going to franchise. So you're either from that area, so that's your team. You went to that college, so that's your team. Your parents went to that college, so that's your team. So in theory, that supporter base is always growing. And people get really, really intense about their support for their college. I love it. I look forward to it every year. I've not gone as far as doing a bracket yet because I don't know nearly enough about it. Bracket being playing a bit of fantasy and making predictions. But yeah, I don't know how much you know about it, Joe, other than your Syracuse talk, but I'm excited about this.
Well, interestingly, I knew nothing until I started co-producing a show with Sesame Workshop, and a couple of the folks from Sesame Workshop came over and they were talking about Syracuse, and they were a mad Syracuse fan.
Yeah.
My friend Phil, who now works in Copenhagen, doesn't work for Sesame any longer, and he brought me over a Syracuse shirt this is years ago. I think 10 years ago at least, that we were producing a show with Sesame. But ever since then, in the fervour and the passion that they spoke about when they spoke about Syracuse and March Madness. So this is my second Syracuse jersey, because the other one fell apart in the wash. But I kind of have that kind of my own little loyalty because of that. But that is really why I'm wondering about showing this across Europe and South Africa. I get it. I know of March Madness. But because it is so tied to that college identity and that loyalty, will that emotional connection really translate to audiences who are sitting outside the US who don't really have it? Doesn't it just mean that it's a basketball competition?
Yeah, but is it any different than people who pick an NFL team or an NBA team? I think what is great about it is there's an intensity to it, right? Because ultimately it means everything to these kids who are trying to obviously win this tournament, but also kind of like these are the stars of the future of the NBA ultimately. So you're not just seeing obviously a tournament at a really, really high level. Some of these players are going to go on to be the best players for the next 15, 20 years. So you're seeing them really, really early on, and the coverage will be so good that they are pointing out to you like who are the ones to really watch out for. But there's always players that come through it as well that you weren't expecting, who then go on, who stand out, who then go on and do the unexpected and then move into the NBA too. So it's exciting for that. Look, and I'm not necessarily even a massive basketball fan as such, but what I love about it again is the intensity that comes with it, and because it is ultimately a knockout. It's kind of like, and it happens all the time. Suddenly, the team that you think is the favorite, they're gone, and look, and that's why again it's quite close to European sports in a lot of ways, because American sports generally are let's play each other 10 times. Like this is kind of like you lose, you're gone.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really interesting about it is, this is the NCAA and Disney quite aggressively exporting that kind of cultural, kind of college sports, March Madness, in a way that we're not very good at doing the other way around. No. We talk about the Premier League. They're trying to break North America, and they want every kid in America to have their Premier League team. The Americans are so much better at exporting that kind of fervour. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is kids who are young, kind of teenage sport fans, who are finding new teams to support, new sports, new players through YouTube. I think this is the ideal forum in which to do that, because kids and teens love spotting an elite player on the way up. Yeah. They like seeing them before they've hit the mega contracts. They like being able to say to the fans, but I've liked that player since I was 15 and they were only 16, 17 playing in March Madness. So I think it's actually, it could be genius.
And also, like, if you think about it this way as well, potential for the colleges as well, it's a great recruitment opportunity for them, because, there are players, right? There's lots of players who play in the NBA now who are European, or from Africa, right, or other parts of the world that have then gone on to go through the US college system. Like, this just opens the eyes, I think, to up-and-coming basketball players, both male and female, that this is a pathway potentially in through education to then go and play at the highest level. Yeah,
agree. Cool. Okay, we're at 29 minutes.
We're done.
Look at that efficiency.
Would you like to wrap up, Joe?
Is it? Oh, God. Now the pressure. It's my turn.
We've run out of stories. That's 5. We're done.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of The Attention Shift. That's been Ed Abbas, and I've been Joe Redfern. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to feature as a guest or give us some questions, then email us at hello@attentionshift.media. And we'll see you next time. See you, Ed.
Bye.